My friend's father tried to set her wedding on fire because she was serious about marrying a woman. This happened about a year ago now. To set the scene, my darling dear friend, we'll call her Alice F24, was getting married to her girlfriend F23 of 4 years. We'll call her Jenny. From what I know, Alice and Jenny met when they were 15 on their high school's cheerleading team and did not get along. I mean actual screaming matches in the parking lot type beat. I'm talking lawn chairs and popcorn were out when they got into it. Skip to a remarkable, earth-shattering junior year and Jenny's prom date just kissed Alice at the prom. When Alice, who is staunchly anti-cheaters, found out that the guy was cheating, she and Jenny had a come-to-Jesus kumbaya where they proceeded to bond over messaging his parents and the entire basketball team in an act of shaming him. Now, for the relevant come-to. During this time, Alice and Jenny started staying over at each other's houses. It should be noted that Jenny and Alice are both very feminine and Jenny is black. I wish it wasn't relevant, but it's a little relevant. Jenny met Alice's parents. I do want to say that I personally met Alice's parents during our collective freshman year of college, which is when I met Alice and Jenny. Her mom is a saint and I absolutely adore her. Her dad, M48, we'll call him Chad, is a bit of a red pill podcast listening loser, and that's if I'm being charitable. He's weirdly homophobic, transphobic, and misogynistic while also ranting the ear off of anyone who will listen about how he's a savior of these people. I don't have all the details of what happened to make Jenny hate him, but I do know it has something to do with him repeatedly referring to her as the black chick despite knowing her name. But I digress. Cut to college. I've just met Alice and Jenny, love them dearly, and have the misfortune of meeting Chad in the flesh. It should be noted that Alice came out when she was 17 and Jenny's family is very supportive and has a few other queer family members within the unit. Despite Alice coming out as gay, her dad said that it's normal for everyone to have intimate feelings for the same gender. Don't worry about it and find a man to treat you good enough that you forget about it. I wish I was joking, but he did send that text to his daughter. But it was at that time that I heard Alice and Jenny had just gotten together and I was happy for them, so Alice blocked Chad for a bit and all was well. Until the wedding. I know that Chad knows that Alice and Jenny are together. I know that Chad knows that Alice and Jenny got engaged. I was at the engagement party where he was present. But apparently even reality can't stop Chad. It'd be iconic if only boldness wasn't wasted on the wretched. Chad also has a history of smoking no matter the location and pretending not to see no smoking signs. Still, Chad called Alice during a girls' night, absolutely pissed that she was taking the joke this far and had to stop living with Jenny or men would get the wrong idea. He started saying something about her biological clock and having his DNA when Alice very firmly cut him off and asked what he was talking about. Apparently, somehow, some way, Chad thought that her wedding invitations were a joke. After a back and forth on speakerphone, Alice hung up after telling him that he was an idiot for thinking that she was in a long-standing joke about having a girlfriend for 4 years. You might be wondering where Alice's mom is in all of this, blissfully uninvolved. The best part of Mrs. J and Chad is that it's an open secret that she desperately wants to divorce him but won't until all of their children together are 18 because she wants to preserve normalcy for the kids. As of today, they should be getting a divorce in about 5 months. She very seriously makes her stance clear that she loves her children and is thrilled to welcome Jenny as her newest daughter. So, we get to the night before the wedding and we're jazzed. I'm going back and forth between suites at this gorgeous venue passing notes between Jenny and Alice like they're lovesick teenagers. I'm doing the thing, we're giggling and having fun, and between both parties which just consists of our entire combined inner friend group from college including the he's, she's, and they's, we're having the best time. Until Chad walks into Jenny's suite. You heard that right. Jenny. Not Alice, his daughter. He was lucky to be invited to the wedding in my opinion, but this was insane and I only heard the half of it. Supposedly, he knocked on the door and walked into the room when someone opened it to ask what was up and he started laying into her on how she was a B-word, unclean, and pulled out printed photos of the devil according to the Christian Bible and left. So they're sitting there after this whirlwind and the guys are making sure Chad left. That's when I walk in, hear the situation, then rush back to Alice to make sure her room wasn't next on his hit list. Get this, Chad isn't religious. Like actually. Like literally. Also, according to Alice, he had stopped taking his medication a week prior to be more present at her wedding, but that medication was what kept him from hallucinating. We shook it off as best as possible and took an early night to chill before the wedding. The ceremony? Gorgeous. Cocktail hour? Stunning. Their first dance? Sobbing. We went around giving speeches celebrating them when it gets to be Chad's turn to give a speech. No one can find him for about 10 minutes. The party in particular is mad suspicious of this, but then Mrs. J sighed with the force of a woman who's been mentally divorced for a decade, got up from her chair, walked over to one of the beautiful wide floor-to-ceiling windows on every wall, Then shines her phone flashlight out into the darkness where part of the party was going to take place. The lights were going to be turned on when they walked out after the dinner. And there Chad was. In all his lack of glory, in his suit, trying to wiggle dry sticks together Boy Scout style to set a fire to the lawn. Remember how I said he was a prolific smoker? Yep. He most certainly had a lighter in his pocket, but in the moment he had resorted to pulling sticks in a hallucinatory daze. When Chad was outside wiggling sticks together, he was doing so on one of the tables outside where the rest of the reception was going to take place with more dancing. Since this was an autumn wedding, there were enough dried leaves that he grabbed a handful and put them on the table. He wasn't exactly yelling when he was driven home, but he was talking about how the whole thing should burn, then demanded Mrs. J bring him a slice of wedding cake. To my knowledge, she did not. Now, I know you're probably wanting to write his behavior off on his medication. Don't. This man has been drunk texting his children for years about them being / not being biologically worthy. He has been abusing his wife for years. He is damn lucky anyone is still willing to talk to him after he has threatened to unalive several people over the years, including his daughters and son. He is not a good person. His hallucinations started 3 or so years ago. He has stated that he prefers being angry and bitter because that means he is smarter. Anger equals intelligence in this man's eyes. He waited no more than 13 hours after his wife's father died to tell everyone how much he always hated him. Her grief was less important than his feelings. He has no room for love in his heart, even on his daughter's wedding day. If you couldn't tell, he didn't succeed in setting fire to their venue and was ushered home for a nap. He also didn't succeed in ruining their wedding day. Update. In the last 2 weeks, my original post had our friend group talking a little bit more about what happened during Alice and Jenny's wedding last year. It should be noted that they were 22-23 when they got married and 23-24 now, but most of our friend group is between 21 and 25. A lot of us are still in the last legs of university or grad school right now. I'm 22 and just started grad school this past year. Their anniversary party was last Saturday so that everyone could attend, but it's not their actual anniversary date. Both Alice and Jenny have pretty well-paying jobs for being relatively fresh out of university, but it's not super surprising since they had fantastic internships in college and got hired through these companies. They have a good-sized place and just adopted 2 cats and a retired service dog. In comes Chad. Oh, Chad. Basically, one of the main issues with Chad and I in particular is that I'm not from the States. I still have an accent, since English is not my first language. I'm also pretty pale, so that's why I'm guessing he didn't realize it sooner into our vague acquaintanceship through Alice. I'm also the only person in the friend group that wasn't born in America, but our friend group is very diverse besides that. After the catastrophe of the wedding, it's a shock that Chad was allowed to come to the party at all. He did, however, seem to get better in the last few months, and Jenny in particular is very forgiving, so she pushed to invite him. This was fine for the most part, since Chad was actually genuinely looking to have gotten a little more normal. Supposedly, he switched up his medication and seems to be more normal, and I was actually sort of happy for Alice. As much as I dislike the man, I want Alice to have this part of her support system. But then we get to the party. Chad was super respectful and thankful about the invitation to the party, up until a week before when he asked, out of the blue, if I was coming to the party. Alice replied that yes, of course I'm going. Radio silence since then until the day of the party, where Chad sent a text saying he was on the way. Chad walks in, and who does he see? Oh yeah, me. I was by the door chatting with a friend when Chad walks in, looks at me, and just says you mother effer. I know Chad isn't my biggest fan, but I was a little taken aback considering this is the first time Chad has talked to me since the July 4th party. I tried to make a joke with finger guns and say you mother effer right back to him, but he didn't think it was very funny. Instead, he decided to tell me how immigrants are going to hell. Like, bro, hello to you too? Well, he told me that he didn't want to see me for the rest of the party and that I should leave and never come back or avoid him for the rest of our lives. I did tell Alice and Jenny about this the other day, but they didn't hear a word about this exchange for the rest of the night. You might be wondering why. The fun thing about this party was that there were many planned games. Planned partner games, even, where you could choose your partner. Charades, Cards Against Humanity, blind drawing, Pictionary, a scavenger hunt, and a fun murder mystery to round off the night. All 2-person adjusted partnership games that Alice and Jenny planned so that everyone could have fun whether or not they were drinking. If you haven't guessed what I did just yet, I want you to just imagine what I could have done with this information, this conversation, and the knowledge that literally no one there wanted to be Chad's babysitter for the night. Every single time it was called for people to find a partner, I latched on like a tapeworm, a leech, even a glued-down magnet on metal. Every time Chad tried to find a new partner or sit out, I was there. There was one point where I literally jumped over the side of the couch just to keep him from partnering with Alice so that she could enjoy her anniversary, because I could tell that he was going to say something about me to her and she would have gotten upset about it. Then Jenny would have been upset, then Chad would have yelled, so I just cut out the middleman. Every time he tried to make a comment about me, I'd talk loud and proud right over him. He'd try to pull out a cigarette and smoke indoors. I'd snatch it out of his hand, thank him for the offer, and stuff it in my pocket. He'd try to run off. I'd offer to grab us buddies drinks mid-game. He'd try to complain to someone. I'd loudly laugh and say, "Wow, what a funny joke, Chad." Right, Chad? Wasn't that a joke? At Alice's anniversary party? At any point, if he walked away, I was right on his heels, telling him all about where I lived before moving to the States. Eventually I think I broke part of his nasty, no good spirit, because at the end of the night he was nearly falling asleep on the couch before he was ushered into a car. If you're wondering, I only grabbed him mocktails. The guy couldn't even use alcohol as an escape. I was also absolutely exhausted, but the only thing he managed to say to Alice was a tired congratulations and a complaint about the booze, so she was pretty happy. Jenny was also thrilled that her father-in-law didn't manage any racist remarks to her. To be perfectly honest, I was kind of miserable the whole night, but that's what friends are for. The party wasn't for me to get absolutely sloshed. It was for Alice to enjoy her party and try her best to maintain her low-contact relationship with her dad. If it were me, I'd cut contact with no sweat off my back. But it's not my relationship, and thankfully that's not my father. It's not my decision to make, but I do feel a little vindicated in knowing that I made Chad's night his worst nightmare. Mrs. J also had a good time as far as I know, but part of my mission was also letting her have a night off from being Chad's babysitter, so I avoided her at all costs.